Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
Well, welcome to Relationships Inside Out, where today we're going to talk about complacency in relationships.
Complacency is this sense of getting comfortable, not putting in effort anymore, just letting things ride, almost taking for granted the space that you're in.
Yeah, and relationship success is not automatic.
Truth. We often think it is, right? Especially if we're years down the road. We just assume the other person is going to stay no matter what.
Well, and it's fascinating because early on, I was reading this article on how we liken it to like a bank account, an investment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like early on, we're putting a lot into that like relationship bank because it's novel, right? But then once we start getting comfortable and we have a little bit more in our belt, then we get a little complacent. You know, things like, I'm not going to ask to take this thing out of the fridge.
Leave my dishes out.
Leave my dishes out. Or
stop dating my partner. I'm going to stop working on my health.
Yeah, and there's thoughts of, well, I want it to be like it used to be. Well, one, it won't be exactly like that because it was so novel. And two, this is where the effort has to come in of doing things to create novelty, excitement. And oftentimes the couples, like you see, they're not communicating as well. And a lot of times it's because they're assuming. Assuming is a big piece of this.
It's beastie.
Oh, I've been with them long enough. I know how they'd react. I'm not going to
I know what they'll do. Yeah, I know what they feel.
Exactly. And so that kind of takes away from their connection.
Yeah.
And when you're not connected,
excuse me,
you're allergic to complacency. Got it.
I am.
So it's interesting when you think about the expectations of what relationship should be, but people aren't putting the effort in to make it that way.
And it's both sides, right? We often as couples therapists hear, well, I'm doing everything and my partner's doing nothing. I'm trying so hard and they're not trying at all. And more often than not, bullshit, right? Or maybe you're trying in ways you think are effective or that used to be, but maybe now we need to switch it up. Maybe what used to show love to our partner at the beginning stages isn't what shows love now.
Yeah.
Think about with kids, right? Before I had kids, how my partner could show me love was taking me on a nice date or telling me sweet things. Now it's
vacuuming,
shampooing, picking up the toys. It's things like that, or giving me an hour to be by myself.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to ride with some of the flow of this too. So just assuming that what worked before is going to work now, that's a farce. You can't do that.
And the complacency is getting in a routine. And it's not steering away from that routine and shaking it up a little bit. Because redundancy and things that are just the same over time, that's, although safe, not exciting.
And people don't like to be bored. I mean, there's a select few people that don't mind being bored, but by and large, as a species, we enjoy the dopamine drip. We enjoy excitement. We enjoy adrenaline. We like things to be mixed up. The monotony is really toxic to marriages, or can be, and relationships. I shouldn't just say marriages.
Yeah. And because in essence, when we're complacent, we're kind of pretty much saying, I'm not prioritizing this, but yet I expect it to be X. And we'll prioritize work. People work long hours and invest in that bank, but they stop investing in the relationship bank as much.
Phone games. Spend a lot of time on the phone games or things like that, right?
Yeah, welcome to roommates now. You're no longer romantic partners.
And that's a hard place to come back from if it gets too far along. Not that it's impossible.
Yeah.
But the sooner you can catch this pattern, all the better, right? Complacency says to my partner, 1, you're not worth my effort. 2, I take you for granted. 3, I don't have to try because I just expect you to be there.
Yeah.
And there's beauty in being able to count on loyalty or count on your partner to ride the highs and lows with you. But if it goes too long, think about the message that's sending to your partner. I no longer value dating you, but I really value my phone. I no longer value helping you around the house, but I really value my own hobbies. And I expect you to support me in those. Not that I'm saying get rid of the phone or the hobbies or the work, but your partnership has to be a higher priority if you want it to sustain, right? The things we prioritize are the things that we give the most attention to and the things that are going to sustain longer.
Yeah, and unfortunately in the United States, the culture here is very much prioritizing work.
Productivity,
I'd
sure.
say family is not a priority. So we're working against the grain.
Mm-hmm.
So it is hard. You're done with work and you're exhausted, and now you have to put effort into scheduling something for your relationship. We schedule shit for work all the time, but not our relationship. Yeah, it's very tough because you see this happen so much. And early on, who we are in relationships when it's novel, it's most likely not who we're gonna be long term.
Nope.
I think first impressions can last several years, like 2 to 4 years, because it takes that many experiences to kind of get to know somebody and
ride the seasons, all the things.
Yeah, like when are you breaking the fart barrier? um, so I mean, the expectation of what it looks like early on is dangerous because we may not be that excited and have that much energy, because when things are new and exciting, we'll make time for it
because it's dopamine hit, right? Anything that gives us those happy juices, we make time for, because we are a species driven on that.
Yeah.
And if we don't keep the dopamine flowing in the relationship, it just kind of slides to the back burner.
Yeah.
And that's a scary place to be.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
No.
I mean, in my opinion, my personal opinion, at least if you do something once a month at the minimum, once a month, ideally you're doing something weekly. And it doesn't have to be much. It means we're going to intentionally wake up at this time before work or before the kids or whatever, and we're going to have coffee together.
Shoulder time. That's what I call it. Sit side by side. Even if you don't say anything, you're just together.
Yeah.
Ideally skin to skin too.
Yeah, if you want to touch cheeks while drinking coffee together, and
I'm assuming you meant face cheeks, Greg.
Oh, yeah. So when we think about complacency, though, in particular with like when I think about it, I think about the couples who come home and they watch Netflix and they are doing the same thing over and over. And this goes back to what you were saying, and where a partner is like, well, if I'm doing all the work, and typically it's like, well, they gave up first. Right. So where is the permission that we can be complacent? Because I think at times we need a break, and it's healthy to be, when I say complacent, it's more along of we need a break of the effort.
Just like slowing down a minute, taking a pause. Maybe we need to take a moment where we just focus on ourselves for a little bit, or where we're just trying to get our life organized. Okay. But it's a moment, not a pattern.
Yeah. And this blows up intimacy. Right. A lot of couples are like, we're not intimate anymore. Well, what's happening with that? Oh, we don't feel connected. Well, why is that? We're complacent. I mean, they don't say this language. Like, this is kind of the pattern.
Or we're tired.
You're tired. You expect intimacy or sex after not being connected, not talking, just assuming, 2 ships in the night.
And I often hear couples say like, oh, I'm too tired for that. Or I don't have time for that. Again, I've said this before, pull up your phone. Prove to me that you aren't on your phone all day. If you can show me that you haven't spent 3 hours on Facebook, I'll believe you. But we give energy to these other bullshit things, to include work. Yes, work is necessary. Yes, we have to work. I obviously know that.
Lame.
I know. But again, where we put our focus and our energy is what's going to take over. Am I cutting off work at 5 like I'm supposed to, or am I bringing it home? Am I letting it impact my mood? Am I spending time with my partner when I'm fresh in the morning before work, when I do have that energy, right? No one said intimacy and stuff has to be at night. It can be during the day. It can be a lunch break. It can be coffee. It can be on the weekends, whatever. There are ways to plan around some of the necessities that include work, childcare, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I have a hard time when they say it's impossible. We don't have time.
We hear it, at least I do.
Yeah, I hear it all the time.
All the time. I don't have time for that.
It's like, well, okay. Will you be too tired for separation if that comes?
Facts. I tell people you make time for your health, or you're going to be forced to make time for the disease. That can be burnout. That can be destruction in your marriage. Doesn't matter what it is. If you aren't making time for the health of that thing, you won't have a choice but to make time for the disease, because disease takes over. And that is true with marriage.
I want to shift a little bit, because as we're talking, I'm thinking about, especially men, at least in the American culture, we're very much socialized to get a job and protect the household, right? It's kind of this very stereotypical role. Obviously, there's a lot that of men who kind of go outside of that, but that's kind of an unconscious narrative. And nowhere in that narrative is make time for the relationship. Right. And there's kind of this unconscious belief or complacency that well, I'm doing my job. I'm doing what's required of me based on what society has told me. And that is why, I mean, that's a big reason why we're working against the grain, is what are the cultural narratives and family narratives about what this looks like? Because we're going off family, and if they weren't good at it, and then we're going on the culture, we have a lot of stuff working against us to do this. But if you are shaking it up and you're not complacent and you're making time for it, I mean, it'll make you happy just in general on an individual level, as well as the relationship health and the connection that you feel.
And speaking of that narrative, right, of, okay, so men's job is to provide and to work. And then women are responsible for the other factors, right?
Plus work.
Right. That's the piece I want to talk about is there is this script that sits behind men and women often, not always, but often. But we forget that when that script originated, the factors were much different.
Much.
Women weren't working. Our society was a lot cheaper. There was differences in child rearing. Like there was a lot of factors that went into that being a more or potentially more balanced space. Now we have to consciously, I call it update our software. We have to update our software with the new conditions, the new rules, the new game that's at play here. Very rare is it a one earner household, especially in America, because it's too expensive, right? And so we have to update the software of, oh, well, it can't just be these set roles. We have to kind of flow with them. We have to shift our expectations, whether we're male or female.
Yeah. And on a societal level, not kind of label men who want to stay at home, who aren't the breadwinners.
Sure.
In heterosexual relationships. On a societal level, on a family level, I like what you're saying. Essentially, to sum it up, complacency is you not upgrading your software to adapt to where your relationship's at.
And your partner's needs.
And expecting that software to still work, even though there's more data, more time.
What if we still had the same computers we had 10, 20, 30 years ago?
We've already broke up with those.
Right? I don't even know if they were 30 years old. Whatever.
Yeah, that's about right.
Our technology has advanced for a reason. Relationships have to too. They have to go through different iterations, cycles, enhancements over time because we as people are always changing.
And this isn't saying fully just disrupt your system that you have, because there is a homeostasis that's important for a relationship. We're saying, don't just go home and sit down and watch TV. Even if you're going home and you're doing XYZ before you go to bed and you don't have time to talk, break that up. Just break up one thing where you change that for spending more time together.
Go behind your partner. If you're both rushing around the house, your partner's doing the dishes, wrap your arms around them. It doesn't take a whole lot sometimes. Or if you're out running errands, grab them their favorite coffee. Bring it home.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to mean huge dates or trips or any of this stuff. It's the little moments, right? The little bids, I call them bids or bids of affection, that can go a really long way. But the key is, if my partner is throwing me a bid, I can't dismiss it and I can't miss it. I have to acknowledge that bid too. It's a both and, right? So if my partner is trying to move out of a complacent state, for my partner to still be motivated to keep doing that, I have to acknowledge it, show gratitude, show appreciation, and then reciprocity.
And that leads to feeling cared about. And that is an extremely important feeling. Well, nice. All of us have felt it. It's a very nice feeling to have, yet we're not prioritizing that feeling. We just expect it to happen. That's kind of the essence of what we're talking about here. I was going to say something about, I lost it now. Talking about the male culture a little bit. It'll come back to me. But.
We're all in this together. It's hard. And with sex, that's a big one. So we had a previous episode that talked about arousal in men and women. And one thing that she shared was that men had spontaneous arousal or arousal that is just, they could be walking down the street and all of a sudden they're aroused. Women is reactive.
Yeah.
I have to have the right conditions built in order for me to feel safe enough to be aroused. We forget about that. I hear this all the time in partnerships of, well, my wife won't have sex with me. Okay. Well, how have you shown her love? I told her I loved her. Are you helping out at home? Or no. Are you doing these things? We have to create conditions that lead to partners wanting to engage, lead to partners wanting to be invested at an intimate level. And that's a big part of this. When we get complacent in relationships, sex is one of the first things to go.
Oh yeah. It's the first sacrifice. Absolutely. I mean, and it doesn't have to cost money.
No.
I did not anticipate this trend, but a lot of my couples, their favorite thing to do that we've kind of developed is they take the speaker listener technique that I use from John Gottman, and then they go on walks. And their walk time just around the neighborhood or block, that enough helps them feel connected. And some of the couples are like, yeah, we've had less fights because we're able to process and we give each other space.
Sure.
Like one couple, whoever's talking is not holding the dog if possible or whatever, if they're walking the dog, and then the other one is, and then they switch. Right. So just being very intentional about who's talking and when, because if like, say you're walking a dog, it's hard to be the one talking. So
one I do with my couples is each night, I want you to sit knee to knee, ideally if you're physically able, or at least some form of touching and connection facing each other with ideally eye contact.
Ideally.
But sharing 3 to 5 things you appreciated about your partner from that day. And not vague ones, not like you're a good mom, things taking care of the house. No. I love that you played with Johnny in this way. I appreciated that you got me out my coffee cup this morning. Whatever it is. That exercise and doing it every day, it helps both partners. It helps the other partner feel seen, but it also helps you remember you like the person who's sitting across from you. They aren't boring. They aren't your enemy. They're actually someone you love and enjoy.
And it builds that positive sentiment that's so important. That when we think of our partner, it's like, it's good, not just all the negative stuff that's happened and problem saturated.
So finding whatever those tools are for you to help kind of stifle off that complacency. It's easy when you're in a relationship to get comfortable, and it's good to be comfortable. But are you still trying?
Yeah. And when the couples come to us, I mean, I'm assuming for you too.
Oh yeah.
Is that's probably one of the top things that's happening underneath it all is the effort's gone. Maybe something led to that, maybe there was some hurt or whatever, but oftentimes it's work got in the way, kids got in the way.
Inertia.
And we've talked about that in different episodes. All these things got in the way and they just naturally got complacent because of the way our culture is. So we're typically working with that a lot with our couples, is finding ways to schedule. Like I'll even make them put an alert on a calendar and time on a family calendar joint. Because a lot of times they're like, yeah, we'll do that. Nope. It's so easy to go back into what's routine. And if we want it to be successful, it can't be on automatic.
And over time, again, adjusting those pieces. We see this at a very big way with empty nesters. So when that last kiddo moves out, does the couple feel connected and like, hey, yeah, we finally get time alone? Or are they sitting there staring at each other of, who are you? Because we forget to pay attention to our marriage. And so maybe we've had one child who's been there for 18 years. Maybe we've had 30 years worth of kids. That's a long time to go without nurturing a relationship. To then have that purpose, that distraction gone, often leaves couples sitting a little blank across from each other because we didn't nurture it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is something we do hear a lot. I'm glad about that is I don't really know my partner as much as I used to.
Or like I thought I did.
Yeah.
Right? That can show up in terms of, even with complacency, is secrecy. So not open communication, or complacency in being mean with your words or unkind. I just expect them to take my bullshit attitude. Or not sharing about my day, my lived experiences. There's so many ways that this shows up, more than just, did you help with vacuuming? Though that is important.
Yeah. I liken this to, or putting effort into relationship maintenance, exercise. It's hard to stay on that track. It's easy to fall off and not exercise because it feels for a lot of us lazy people, it feels much better to not have to like come home tired from working out, lifting weights or running. Same with the relationship. It's like sometimes when you do take that break, it might be hard to come back. Kind of like working out. So just be very conscientious of the things that can motivate you and remind you. Because it's like I said, that's like workout, at least for me.
I love the gym. So For me, but I feel you. When I get off track, those first few ones back is hard.
Very hard. Yeah.
It's
And
hard.
it's easy to get off track. I guess that's kind of the related point is that.
There'll always be a reason.
Yeah.
There'll always be a justification of why I don't have to go.
Why I don't have to do this in a relationship. Oh, you know what? They didn't make the bed today.
No, I'm just feeling a little tired, a little off. Johnny's been a pain in the ass, whatever it is. There's always a reason.
I'm glad we talk about this because it is very important to get away from blaming your partner for why it is the way it is and think about what you have control over and your role in it. Because both partners play a role in it. Both. Oh, well, if they didn't do this, I would probably put more effort in. That's not you're allowing them that much control over you?
That's not how this works. It is not tit for tat. I know it feels imbalanced. And if that continues, that's when we sit down with our partner and say, I'm still putting in this effort and I'm not feeling matched. Or you go to a couples counselor. But to your point, just because your couple or your partner lets off the throttle doesn't mean you get to. Maybe that's the very moment they need to see you show up more. Maybe they're burnt out.
And it will oscillate. There's normalcy to that.
But everyone plays a role.
And oftentimes we're not focused on what we could do. If that other person could change, I'd feel much better. I would actually put way more effort in. I would be so happy. All they have to do is this one thing. The problem is that goalposts always move.
And now it's this other thing.
Now it's this other
thing. And this other thing.
And it's all these reasons to be complacent. It's just like, okay, you're lazy.
And we as people are, at least from my perspective, somewhat of a naturally lazy species. We like things easy, convenient, not much effort.
It might be cultural.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, we are in the United States. So we're American. That's probably true.
A lot of technology.
Let me just hide my face for a second here. But it's true.
Well, time is money here. So everything has been developed.
Lord Almighty.
That it has to be immediate, right? And yeah.
And to that point, if I expect immediacy in my relationship, it's like working out. I can't work out once and expect to be ripped to shit. Like, that's not how this works.
It should be. But...
Oh my gosh, I wish. Oh, I wish. In a relationship, I can't expect to serve my partner one time or for one day or for 1 week and have them fawning all over me again and so reciprocal. No, it's consistent effort even when it sucks.
Yeah, well, I did the dishes, so why didn't we have sex?
Oh my gosh, the amount I hear that like tit for tat, especially heterosexual bullshit. I can't. I can't. Well, I helped you with the kids, so you wanna? No, I sure don't. You didn't help me with the kids. You made these bonds, and we helped each other with these children.
Yeah.
Woo, soapbox.
It's like that's your job, and it's like, hey, do you need support today?
This statement of I did the dishes for you. I took care of the kids for you. Oh, it ain't for me, sister.
It's for us.
It's for us. It's for our house.
For your kids.
I did the laundry for you. Nah, bro. You did it for the house. What would be for me is a coffee and a massage. Now take that. But this like for you. And that speaks to the complacency. That somehow I am like giving you this gift of actually meeting you with this need, this household need. And that should be seen as good enough.
And with that, I expect
it's not.
And with that, I expect the most vulnerable part of our relationship.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
We bring this up because this is constant in couples work.
Yeah.
I asked her how she was feeling this morning. I thought we'd have sex tonight. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And this might even come after something like drastic, like, oh, I cheated.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, well, I said, oh, sorry. Like, why can't
I'm not going to do it again. So like, why does it matter?
Yeah, I said, sorry, we should be over this.
It wasn't that big a deal. It wasn't that good anyway. These are the phrases we hear constantly. And I don't think it necessarily even comes out of malice. I think it comes out of people's fear of failure, people's fear of shame, out of low energy in our culture, whatever it might be. I don't always think it comes out of malice, but it doesn't excuse the behavior, even if it comes from a place of being hurt.
And it might come off like we're like mocking this stuff. And if you were to know us as therapists, at least we're both very forward and we challenge these.
Yeah.
And this is after we've explored where does that expectation come from? Right? Like, did that happen with your parents? Or where did you get the knowledge that if you did X, A plus B equaled C? It's beyond that. It's more of like, now we've determined that this is really just complacency, and then we'll challenge that. So this is kind of the point where we're at. I know it probably sounds like we're insensitive when we're coming up with these phrases that just
fair.
Yeah.
We're used to this rhetoric, right?
Yeah.
But we're also used to challenging it. We're used to seeing the dark underbelly of it.
Yeah. I don't like it. I think it's absolutely lazy and completely complacent when you just expect to do very minimal and your partner to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't spend time connecting. You didn't put any effort into building anything that says, I care about
safe.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the big piece of this is, do I feel safe? Do I feel safe to take the risk? Do I feel safe to try to help you? Do I feel safe to fall apart sometimes? That safety is an important part of complacency. Double-edged sword. If I feel too safe, I might be more complacent because they're not going anywhere. But also, do I feel safe to tell my partner, hey, I don't feel like we're matching an effort? Do I feel safe to tell my partner, to even ask how to help without fear of getting my head chewed off? Right?
Yeah.
So safety can also be a big part of this.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we determine whether it's complacency because of just complacency or there's a safety thing. Because that might be a reason that it appears that way. And that does come up quite a bit too.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Because that is a factor of, well, why didn't you communicate? Because when you think about complacency, it's also just not talking to your partner about how you feel, what's going on for you. And tuning them into where you're at. Now, if you don't feel safe, that might be one reason.
Right.
The other reason is, well, I know what they're going to say. The assumption, going back to the assumption piece that we've talked about early on.
And seeing a therapist, again, or seeing your minister or pastor or getting a support group or whatever, being able to really explore your assumptions, your complacency, your bias without judgment for yourself or for your partner, getting curious about where it comes from without assuming, well, they're just a lazy piece of shit, so therefore, blah, blah, blah. We can't do that. We've got to explore where it comes from, how we got to this pattern. Were you overfunctioning for your partner that led to this? What does it mean about you that you are in an overfunctioning state? Right?
Yeah.
How do we as a couple decide to shift that? Where you have to back off a little bit. That's hard too. Stepping forward is hard, but backing off can be just as hard. The loss of control.
Yeah, and even exploring the statements we talked about earlier that clients say is like, oh, I did the dishes, so we should have sex. Like even exploring that, because if there's an underlying expectation that's cultural there, is that agreed upon? And if not, that's a disparity we have to talk about because it's coming off as complacent to your partner,
right,
who is not feeling reciprocity. Now, it's not to say what you're doing is right or wrong. Now it's more of like a contract that we have to now discuss of, well, then what is this going to look like moving forward? This is why I'm a huge advocate for premarital counseling for couples dating. You can have somebody like a therapist like us ask the important questions that people aren't really thinking about when you're in the honeymoon phase. We don't want to think about that. We don't want to think about expectations. And it's like, well, hold on, let's understand. Well, first, let's see how did your parents manage and show love? How did they not? What are your expectations for what sex looks like if you were even aware of that in your family of origin? Because a lot of that will kind of, at least I've experienced, is give a picture of what your partner might do.
And tune-up therapy. So once you are married or you've been together a long time, don't wait until the 11th hour to come in. Don't wait until you're ready to strangle your partner. Come in the second you notice something is just a little off. It is so much easier to tune up a relationship than to overhaul a relationship. So don't be shy to come in. And part of this, again, is stigma around couples therapy. No one even has to know you're there. That's the beauty. There's HIPAA. We aren't telling anyone. You don't have to tell anyone.
Yeah.
You can have complete anonymity if you want to.
Yeah, we're not even supposed to engage in public if we see you in public.
Nope. And so having that space can be profound in helping a relationship move in a good way.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in previous episodes. It's not necessarily just fixing the problems. It's finding where dynamics could potentially lead to some problems, and getting you in an ideal place where you feel connected and full and content and happy in your relationship to where you're satisfied.
Good point.
You're satisfied with your partner. You feel close. You actually you feel like you know each other again, and kind of getting back to the early lust stages, right? Where, because you see that with the couples that do come in for tune-up, is they'll get into that flirty phase and get back into that fun and exciting period. And it's not going to be identical. But.
And I just want to say this, complacency or taking our partner for granted is actually a normal pattern that happens in relationships. So if this is something you're facing, it doesn't mean you're doomed. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means it's time for action, right? I'm sure even in our marriages, we've had moments where it's come to that place. So tune it up.
Not me. I'm on 100 full time.
And next we will be interviewing your wife.
Stay tuned.
Well, today we talked about complacency, where we kind of lack the effort we need for our partner. And we're here to really encourage you to evaluate what's underneath that for both of you, including yourself, and get to the bottom of it so you can get it moving again. As always, if anyone has any questions, topic suggestions, or anything, feel free to email us at relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. Thanks.
Thanks.